Welcome back to the Deep Dive, where we commit to taking your stack of research, all those articles, clinical trials, and deep industry notes, and really extracting the most essential knowledge. And we design it specifically for you, the learner.
Right.
Today, we are diving into a topic that I think sits right at the intersection of performance, some really aggressive marketing, and genuine health risk.
Yeah.
We're talking about multi-ingredient pre-workout supplements.
Or MIPWs, as we'll probably be calling them.
Exactly, MIPWs.
And this is a really complex deep dive because these things are absolutely everywhere. We are talking about those ubiquitous, flavored powders.
The bright blue one, the neon green one.
Exactly. Often brightly colored, intensely focused on energy. People mix them with water. They consume them right before they hit the gym or start a grueling run.
Right.
So our mission today it's laser focused. We are analyzing your sources to strictly separate the science from the hype. We need to know precisely what works, what provides proven benefits and efficacy.
And on the flip side of that, what are the dangers? What are the documented risks? The serious safety concerns, adverse events, and the toxic ingredient risks we hear about.
That's the whole picture.
I find this whole world of performance supplements just endlessly fascinating. The claims are always so huge. Improve strength, elevate your endurance, increase exercise efficiency, get you to your goals faster.
Of course.
The implication is always that this one single scoop is the missing link in your training. But the reality, and we've seen this in the sources, is just far, far murkier than the marketing suggests.
It is entirely complex. MIPWs are a specialized, really high-growth subset of the massive herbal and dietary supplements industry, the HDS industry. And global use is just climbing fast.
So this is a huge market.
A massive market.
Okay.
And the challenge for you, for the consumer, it really stems from the formulation itself. These products rarely contain just one ingredient. They almost always contain what are called proprietary blends.
And proprietary just means secret, right? They don't have to tell you everything.
Essentially, yes. Secret ingredients, or more often, secret amounts. The blend might contain multiple compounds, sometimes ranging from just 3 to, and this is a key number, well over 20 different components.
Over 20 ingredients in one scoop.
Yeah.
And you're saying I might not even know the exact dose of each one.
That's precisely it. And that lack of transparency, that combination complexity, it creates a profound research barrier for scientists. The combined efficacy and, critically, the safety of these unique combinations are often completely unknown.
Unknown because no one's tested that specific mix before.
Exactly. You'd need specific, lengthy clinical trials conducted on that exact proprietary formulation. If you change one ingredient or just one dose, the entire physiological effect, the risk profile, it could shift entirely. This makes it challenging, if not impossible, for researchers to assign causality for any outcomes they see, whether they're positive or, negative.
So if someone has a great workout or a bad reaction, you can't really point to one thing in the scoop and say, that's the reason.
It's a black box.
Let's begin with the draw then. The performance promise. We know these products are incredibly popular, so let's start with the good news. What does the research say about the overall immediate ergogenic effects? Do they actually deliver on that promise of a better workout?
Okay, so when we look at the acute effects, and by that I mean the results after a single serving taken right before exercise, the evidence is actually quite supportive.
Okay.
MIPWs are clearly designed and formulated to acutely or immediately improve exercise performance. The sources highlight that they do positively influence metrics like muscular endurance. They can significantly delay the onset of perceived fatigue.
Which is huge, that feeling of hitting a wall.
It's the whole game for many people,
Yeah.
and they increase your tolerance for those really intense training sessions. You feel like you can just push harder.
Delaying fatigue is a massive claim, especially for something like high-volume resistance training. Can you give us an example of how that translates into, measurable outcomes in a study?
Certainly. There was one detailed 2022 study on a specific MIPW formulation. It noted that consumption improved the subject's performance on sustained attention tasks and reaction time tasks.
So a mental boost, not just physical.
A strong cognitive component to that immediate benefit. And furthermore, and this is important because it validates the subjective experience, the participants reported significantly improved vigor and reduced fatigue levels.
So they didn't just perform better on the tests, they felt better. They felt more energetic.
Exactly. So a single dose often provides a very noticeable, very immediate boost, both mentally and functionally. It helps you push harder and focus better during that specific training window.
Okay, that covers the immediate hit, that feeling you get 30 minutes after you drink it.
Yeah.
But the people buying these big tubs, they want sustained results, right? They're using it consistently, maybe 3, 4, 5 times a week over months, alongside a dedicated training regimen.
Of course, they're looking for long-term adaptation.
So does that chronic use, say, for 8 weeks or more, does that translate into greater physical changes? More muscle, less fat?
The evidence here is, I would say, generally positive, but, and this is a big but, we have to frame it with some necessary context and a few caveats.
Okay.
Chronic consumption of MIPWs, specifically when it's coupled with a periodized resistance training program that is, structured progressive weightlifting, it does appear to augment beneficial changes in body composition.
Okay.
This is primarily seen through increased lean mass accretion, more muscle gain. In theory, if you can sustain a higher volume or a higher intensity during your workout because of the supplement, you should, over time, achieve greater training adaptations.
Makes sense. More work equals more results.
And the data suggests that extended use enhances these adaptations with a low risk for adverse events, provided, and this is the key phrase, the consumer strictly follows the manufacturer's recommendations.
Wait, I have to jump in there. If the data suggests a low risk for adverse events when you follow the recommendations, why are we dedicating, the whole second half of this deep dive to the danger zone?
Because that single assumption is the core of the entire challenge. We are about to introduce the crucial nuances and the limitations of that statement.
Okay, lay it on me.
Firstly, that low-risk caveat assumes you're dealing with a reputable manufacturer, you have accurate labeling, and the user has no pre-existing health conditions.
Conditions that are often not met in the real world.
Very often not met. And secondly, the positive findings about chronic use, they need to be seriously tempered by the limitations of the existing research itself.
And what are those limitations? What's the problem with the studies?
The vast majority of studies that have looked at both safety and efficacy are, frankly, very short. We're talking 8 weeks and often even less.
It's not very long.
It's a significant data gap. 8 weeks is simply not a long enough time frame to confidently determine the long-term impact of consistent use on complex metrics like maximal force production or sustained aerobic performance, or critically, the long-term physiological stress on your systems.
Like your liver, your cardiovascular system.
Your liver, your heart, your kidneys. We just lack the longitudinal data to fully guarantee sustained benefits or sustained safety over 6 months, a year, or longer. We just don't have it.
So we know it helps for maybe 8 weeks, but after that, it's really a toss-up. We don't know if the benefits plateau or if some unseen risks might start accumulating.
Precisely. But the most compelling evidence against the, let's say, universal superiority of MIPWs comes from a specific type of study.
Yeah.
The comparator trial.
Okay, what's that?
There was one really well-designed, double-blind, randomized controlled trial. It focused on middle-aged, physically active men and women over a 6-week resistance training program. They set up a comparison.
An A versus B test.
Exactly. One group received a specific MIPW. It contained a high dose of stimulants, about 406 milligrams of caffeine, and 12 grams of essential amino acids.
So, pretty powerful, typical pre-workout.
Yes. The control group, however, received an isocaloric comparator, just a simple carbohydrate-only drink. The key is that the drinks had the exact same caloric content, only the fancy performance ingredients were different.
So the question here is a big one. Does the highly engineered multi-ingredient blend with all the bells and whistles outperform essentially sugar water when they're both paired with the exact same training program?
And the result was, well, it was a massive dampener on the marketing hype.
Oh, interesting.
Both groups achieved statistically similar, highly beneficial outcomes. Both groups significantly reduced their fat mass. Both increased their fat-free mass and saw similar increases in muscle thickness in key areas.
So similar levels of hypertrophy of muscle growth.
Yes. They also saw comparable improvements in strength, in power output, and in muscular endurance.
So let me get this straight. For the average middle-aged gym goer in this study, all those added ingredients, the caffeine, the amino acids, the creatine, whatever else was in that blend, it provided virtually no additional benefit to their muscle growth, their strength gains, or their overall fat loss compared to just drinking a Gatorade before the workout.
That is the essential, profound takeaway from that study. The body used the fuel it was given, the calories, to power the training session. And the training stimulus, the lifting itself, was the primary driver of the adaptation.
So what was the difference? There had to be something.
The only significant finding that differentiated the MIPW group was a small, statistically significant reduction in waist circumference.
That's it.
That was it. But in terms of the core goals of hypertrophy and strength, the complex pre-workout offered no meaningful advantage over a simple isocaloric fuel source in this context.
Wow, that really undercuts the whole universal claim that MIPWs are the key to maximizing every single training session. It suggests that, the financial investment in these complex blends might not even be justified for a lot of users who are already fueling properly.
It absolutely raises a fundamental question, a question about ingredient cost versus actual benefit. If a simple carbohydrate fuel source achieves similar results in 6 weeks of resistance training, why risk the potential cardiovascular and gastrointestinal side effects that come with high doses of stimulants and multi-ingredient complexity?
That's a great question.
It forces the average person to critically reevaluate whether that marginal benefit, if any, is worth the increased complexity, the financial cost, and the potential risk.
That nuance is absolutely vital for you, for the listener. Okay, now we know that these complex blends contain ingredients that do work on their own. We have to honor those effective compounds.
We do.
So let's look inside the tub. Let's detail the specific research-backed ingredients that deliver verifiable performance enhancement. And we have to start, of course, with the undisputed king.
Caffeine, the foundation of almost everything.
Caffeine is a methylated xanthine. It's the primary central nervous system stimulant in pretty much every MIPW. We feel the rush, the wakefulness, but what is the exact physiological mechanism that translates that feeling of alertness into genuine, quantifiable physical performance?
The mechanism is really elegant and it's powerful. Caffeine is what's called an adenosine receptor antagonist.
Okay, break that down.
Adenosine is a neuromodulator. Your body produces it, and when it binds to receptors on your cells, it signals fatigue. It promotes these sedative-like properties.
It's the time to slow down chemical.
Perfect way to put it. By ingesting caffeine, you're essentially flooding those receptor sites, and you're effectively blocking adenosine from binding. So the result isn't new energy, it's the removal of the brake pedal on your brain's alertness system.
I like that analogy.
And this translates directly into increased arousal, enhanced mental focus, and crucially, a reduced perception of pain and exertion. It lowers your RPE, your rate of perceived exertion.
So it doesn't actually make your muscles stronger, but it makes the maximal effort feel easier, which allows you to train closer to your absolute limit for longer.
Exactly. You are mitigating the central fatigue signals from the brain. On the physical front, this translates into measurable improvements across endurance, strength, and power metrics.
And there's a metabolic effect too, right?
Yes, during long-duration endurance exercise, caffeine might promote the mobilization of free fatty acids as a primary energy source. And by doing that, it helps spare your crucial muscle glycogen stores, allowing for more sustained activity.
Okay, I have to ask a safety question here. If caffeine is essentially masking the body's natural signals, the RPE, the pain, the fatigue, are we running the risk of pushing past our natural limits to the point of injury? Is that a safety concern we should be talking about?
That is a critical question, and it really speaks to the necessary tension of using any ergogenic aid. In a controlled training environment, the ability to push past those perceived limits can be what drives adaptation. That's the goal. However, if that perceived reduction in exertion leads to a significant breakdown in your form, your technique, or it causes an acute structural overload, yes, the risk of injury certainly increases.
Right.
This is why the use of high-dose stimulants should always be paired with self-awareness and careful monitoring of your technique, not, reckless abandonment of your safety limits just because you feel good.
Let's talk about the dose, because as we're going to see, more is definitely not better, and too much can be fatal. What's the sweet spot for performance?
The scientific consensus for performance enhancement is an ingestion of about 2 to 6 milligrams of caffeine per kilogram of body weight.
Okay. What does that look like for an average person?
For an average 70-kilogram person, that's about 154 pounds, this is a range of roughly 140 to 420 milligrams. And the research is compellingly clear on this. Once you cross that threshold, particularly above 6 kilograms, the likelihood of any further performance enhancement just drops off sharply.
But the side effects don't.
The risk of negative side effects, anxiety, jitters, GI distress, increases dramatically. The optimal timing is about 15 to 60 minutes before exercise. That aligns with peak plasma concentration given caffeine's 4 to 5 hour half-life.
And what about habituation? If I drink coffee every single day, does a pre-workout suddenly become less effective for me?
The evidence here is, well, it's mixed, which can be frustrating. Some data does suggest that individuals who are not habituated to a high daily caffeine intake may experience a greater ergogenic effect.
That makes intuitive sense.
It does. But other studies suggest that regular intake doesn't really diminish the performance benefits. If an athlete is trying to maximize the effect for a specific competition, some sources suggest limiting intake to below 50 milligray a day or even abstaining for a few days beforehand.
To kind of reset their tolerance.
Right. But that practice is controversial. It depends very highly on individual physiology and, dependency levels.
Okay, let's move on to creatine. This is arguably the most thoroughly studied, validated, and widely used dietary supplement for athletic performance. And its safety profile seems remarkably strong.
Creatine is fundamental. Its efficacy lies in enhancing the capacity for high-intensity, short-duration exercise, and its ability to increase lean body mass over time is very well documented.
And it all comes down to energy, right? ATP.
Its primary mechanism is tied directly to cellular energy, specifically the production of adenosine triphosphate, or ATP.
So how does it manage that? How does it help with ATP?
By increasing the availability of what's called phosphocreatine, or PCR, stores within the muscle. PCR is the body's rapid-access energy reserve. It's used to quickly regenerate ATP during those first few seconds of high-intensity anaerobic activity.
Like a heavy squat or an explosive sprint.
Exactly. Creatine supplementation essentially saturates the muscle with PCR. This enables the athlete to perform maybe an extra repetition or two at a maximal load. It accelerates PCR resynthesis during your short rest periods, and it even enhances glycogen storage in the skeletal muscle.
So it's probably not that useful for a marathon runner, but it's invaluable for someone doing resistance training where the effort is intense and the recovery windows are really short.
That's the sweet spot. It optimally enhances performance in those repeated cycles of high-intensity exercise followed by short recovery periods. The protocol is also really well established regardless of sex or body size.
What is that protocol?
Usually it's a loading phase of about 20 grams per day for 5 to 7 days to rapidly saturate the muscles. And that's followed by a maintenance phase of just 3 to 5 grams per day.
And you mentioned its safety profile is strong, maybe even protective. That's a huge claim in the supplement world.
It is, and it's compelling. The International Society of Sports Nutrition has explicitly stated that athletes who consistently supplement with creatine have a lower incidence of injuries. Lower incidence of things like muscle strains, cramps, and other exercise-related side effects compared to athletes who do not use it. This suggests a potential protective role, perhaps due to enhanced hydration or quicker recovery. It makes a very strong argument not just for efficacy, but for overall safety when it's used correctly.
Fascinating. Okay, next up, the compound known for the tingles, beta-alanine. This is consistently included in MIPWs for its ability to buffer that acid buildup during intense work.
That's precisely its role. Beta-alanine is a precursor to a compound called carnosine. When you supplement with a sufficient dose, typically 4 to 6 grams per day, and you have to do this for 2 to 4 weeks, it significantly increases the concentration of carnosine in your muscle tissue.
Why is carnosine so important during exercise? What's it doing?
During high-intensity exercise, your muscles produce hydrogen ions. These H+ ions lower the muscle pH, and that's what causes the burning sensation and leads to metabolic acidosis.
That's the burn that makes you stop.
That acidity is what triggers fatigue and forces you to stop. Carnosine acts as an intracellular buffer. It literally neutralizes these hydrogen ions. This buffering action delays the onset of fatigue and attenuates that neuromuscular shutdown.
And that improvement in buffering capacity translates directly into increased time to exhaustion.
Yes, specifically in high-intensity exercise lasting more than 60 seconds. But its effectiveness drops off significantly in activities lasting over 4 minutes.
Why is that?
Because at that point, your aerobic metabolism takes over as the primary energy pathway, and acid accumulation is less of a limiting factor, so it's very much a high-intensity, short-duration endurance aid.
Now, we have to talk about the famous, or maybe infamous side effect, paresthesia, the skin tingling or burning sensation. It's benign, we know that,
Yeah.
but it's such a distinct physiological marker that it makes double-blinding studies on it almost impossible.
It is the defining feature. The paresthesia is harmless, but it can be intensely irritating for many users. What's interesting from a formulation and practical standpoint is how companies try to manage this.
Right.
Since the tingling is dose-dependent and it's related to the speed of absorption, many manufacturers have started recommending lower fractionated doses throughout the day. Or they use extended release formulations within the MIPW to mitigate that rapid irritating effect.
So it's an example of where a known side effect is actually driving both the user experience and the formulation science behind the product.
It is, absolutely.
Let's look at the ingredients responsible for the popular pump feeling, the nitric oxide precursors like L-citrulline and L-arginine. The goal here is vasodilation, right? Increasing blood flow. What is the fundamental mechanism?
The mechanism is boosting the production of nitric oxide, or NO, which is a potent gaseous signaling molecule. NO causes the relaxation of the vascular smooth muscle cells that surround your arteries.
And that leads to a widening of the blood vessels.
Vasodilation, exactly. This, in turn, increases the velocity and the volume of blood flow.
Why do we care about more blood flow during exercise?
Yeah.
What's the benefit?
Primarily for two reasons: delivery and removal. Increased blood flow delivers more oxygen, more glucose, and key nutrients like the amino acids we just discussed directly to the working skeletal muscles.
Okay, so feeding the muscle.
And just as importantly, it speeds up the removal of metabolic waste products, things like lactate and ammonia, which contribute significantly to muscle fatigue during intense efforts.
We see both L-arginine and L-citrulline used for this. Now, L-arginine is the direct precursor to NO synthesis. So why is L-citrulline so heavily favored in formulas now?
That's a great question. While L-arginine is the necessary amino acid precursor for NO, supplementing directly with L-arginine is often, well, it's pretty ineffective.
Why?
Because it's rapidly metabolized by the liver and intestines before it can reach the systemic circulation at high enough levels. L-citrulline, however, it bypasses this initial metabolic filter.
Oh, right.
It is then efficiently converted in the body into L-arginine, and it often raises blood arginine levels and consequently NO production far more effectively than supplementing with L-arginine alone would.
So L-citrulline is essentially a superior delivery mechanism for L-arginine. It's a backdoor way to get it into your system.
Precisely. And beyond just vasodilation and improved blood flow, L-citrulline has also been shown to play a role in optimizing phosphocreatine recovery after high-intensity exercise, so it synergizes nicely with the effects of creatine.
And the sources pointed out a broader benefit here, too, linking NO production not just to the pump, but to long-term systemic health.
That is a critical connection. Nitric oxide's role extends far beyond muscle performance. It plays a significant and well-documented role in protecting against the onset and progression of cardiovascular diseases.
How so?
This includes regulating blood pressure, maintaining basal vascular tone, and preventing platelet aggregation, which is a key step in clot formation. So while the user is seeking the pump for aesthetic and performance reasons, the underlying biological mechanism has genuine long-term cardiovascular protective benefits.
Finally, let's quickly cover two agents often included for their roles in recovery and muscle maintenance: betaine and tart cherry. Starting with betaine.
Betaine, or trimethylglycine, is a compound found naturally in things like beets. Its hypothesized ergogenic benefits are multifaceted. It's thought to increase creatine synthesis and boost nitric acid levels.
So it's synergistic with the other ingredients.
Right, with other ingredients in the blend. Additionally, it acts as what's called an osmolyte, helping to enhance cellular water retention.
And what do the clinical trials show for its specific benefits at these supplementary doses?
Studies using supplemental doses, typically ranging from 2 to 5 grams per day, have indeed demonstrated ergogenic effects. These include modest but measurable reductions in adiposity.
So fat loss.
Right. Potential increases in muscle mass, and significant help in reducing fatigue and muscle damage post-exercise.
Okay. And any other benefits?
A detailed systematic review highlighted that betaine supplementation had a statistically positive effect on key markers of cardiovascular health. Specifically, it lowered total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol, and homocysteine concentrations.
And importantly, did it have negative effects?
Importantly, the review confirmed that betaine did not negatively influence blood pressure or liver enzymes, which really bolsters its safety profile.
And tart cherry. This is often recommended specifically for muscle soreness.
Tart cherry, particularly the Montmorency variety, is included due to its rich content of anthocyanins. These are powerful flavonoids hypothesized to possess significant anti-inflammatory and antioxidant properties.
Okay.
And the research suggests tangible benefits in the recovery phase after intense activity.
What does that recovery benefit look like, practically speaking?
Practically, we see a more rapid recovery of muscle strength and significantly lower perceived muscle soreness. There was one interesting pilot study that focused on marathon runners.
Okay.
It showed that those who consumed tart cherry juice both before and after the race managed to avoid the severe exercise-induced airway inflammation symptoms that affected nearly half of the runners in the placebo group.
Right.
It suggests a systemic anti-inflammatory effect that aids in recovery from major physical stress.
Okay. We have thoroughly covered the best-case scenario. A handful of powerful, research-backed ingredients that, when dosed correctly, provide a tangible edge in training adaptation.
Right, the upside.
But those ingredients are often formulated into products within a poorly regulated market, which is where the risk factor just explodes. So we must now shift completely and balance those benefits against the very real, sometimes fatal, documented risks associated with MIPWs.
This shift is absolutely crucial. While we establish that certain MIPWs are generally safe for healthy adults when used correctly, the margin for error is razor thin. They carry substantial, unpredictable risks.
Why?
Primarily due to the inclusion of high-dose, unmonitored stimulants and the extreme variability inherent in proprietary blends and unregulated manufacturing.
So let's start the danger discussion by returning to that core stimulant, caffeine. We noted that the performance window is narrow, but the danger window is wide open once that dose escalates.
The issue is often accidental or even intentional dose escalation by the consumer, or just receiving an excessively potent dose from the manufacturer. Consuming high levels of caffeine, which is generally defined as 500 milligrams per day or more, actually begins to diminish physical performance,
How does it do that?
primarily by disturbing sleep quality. And it leads to noticeable negative psychological side effects, including irritability, generalized anxiety, and severe jitters.
But the acute adverse effects, they go beyond just feeling uncomfortable, right?
They absolutely do. An acute overdose or even just a high sensitivity can trigger anxiety attacks, muscle tremors, severe insomnia, restlessness, and significant gastrointestinal distress, manifesting as nausea and vomiting.
And the most serious effects.
Most seriously, we see measurable cardiovascular distress. This includes tachycardia, a dangerously fast heart rate, and cardiac arrhythmia, which is an irregular heartbeat.
That sounds like a serious concern for anyone with an undiagnosed or pre-existing cardiac condition. But the dosing danger for pure powdered caffeine is where the situation becomes life-threateningly severe.
It cannot be overstated. Pure powdered caffeine is one of the most volatile substances a consumer can legally purchase. It is incredibly potent.
Put it in perspective for us.
An acute oral dose of just 10 to 14 grams, which translates to only 150 to 200 milligrams per kilogram of body weight, can be fatal. 10 grams is roughly a single tablespoon of the powder.
A tablespoon.
Yes, this highlights the absolute necessity of accurate measurement by weight, not by volume, and the horrifying ease with which a person can accidentally consume a lethal dose.
That is genuinely terrifying. And we have documented cases of young, healthy people dying from this exact scenario. How can you, the listener, who might encounter pure powdered caffeine, avoid this danger?
The only way to safely handle pure powdered ingredients is with a calibrated scale, but honestly, the risk of mismeasurement in a standard home environment is just too great. The documented cases of fatality are a direct consequence of someone confusing a tiny measuring scoop with a standard kitchen tablespoon or teaspoon.
So what's the advice?
The practical advice is simple. Avoid pure powdered forms entirely. Stick to pre-portioned, third-party verified products where the dosage is already controlled and standardized by the manufacturer.
Beyond caffeine, manufacturers often use other sympathetic stimulators to achieve an even stronger perceived kick. And this introduces compounds like synephrine. This ingredient carries some documented severe risks.
Synephrine, which is derived from bitter orange, gained popularity as a substitute stimulant after the FDA banned compounds like ephedra. It's marketed as an aid that increases lipolysis and metabolic rate.
And its proponents argue that it's safer, right?
Right. They argue that it selectively targets the beta-3 adrenergic receptors, which should minimize cardiac side effects.
But the danger is that it is not selective enough.
Precisely. Synephrine acts as a broad-spectrum sympathetic stimulator. While it does target beta-3, it also stimulates the beta-1 and beta-2 adrenergic receptors.
And what do those do?
Those are the primary drivers of heart rate and blood pressure increases. This is where the cardiovascular risk is generated.
And the review of case reports. It documents truly serious outcomes. We are not talking about just getting the jitters here.
Absolutely not. A comprehensive review of case reports found severe cardiovascular anomalies directly linked to synephrine use. The patient's symptoms were alarming: chest pain, severe palpitations, syncope, which is fainting, and dizziness.
And when these patients were clinically evaluated, what did they find?
The diagnoses were catastrophic.
Like what? What were the specific diagnoses?
The documented diagnoses included severe ischemic heart disease, such as acute coronary syndrome, which is a blanket term for a heart attack, serious cardiac arrhythmias like ventricular fibrillation, and cerebrovascular disease leading to stroke.
My God.
In a review analyzing 35 affected patients, 10 were diagnosed with ischemic heart disease, 4 with cardiac arrhythmias, and 2 with cerebrovascular disease. Synephrine is a highly efficient sympathetic nervous system agonist, and its use represents a documented non-zero risk of severe, life-altering cardiovascular events.
While the cardiovascular risks are clearly the most life-threatening, MIPWs also cause a high number of general and gastrointestinal complaints that are reported by consumers. What are the most common day-to-day side effects?
A widespread survey of MIPW users provides very clear data on this. The single most reported complaint was skin reactions, cited by 34.3% of users.
The tingles again.
Overwhelmingly, yes. Characterized as a skin itching or burning sensation, scientifically termed paresthesia, which, as we discussed, is largely attributable to the high doses of beta-alanine.
So the common expected tingle is officially the most frequent complaint users have about these products.
It is, though it's benign. Following that, users reported gastrointestinal distress. Nausea was reported by 26.6% of users. Close behind were accelerated heartbeat or palpitations, reported by 23.4%.
What else?
Other frequently cited negative symptoms included dizziness, tremors, insomnia, diarrhea, and just a general upset stomach.
So a significant portion of the user base is trading potential performance for a guaranteed dose of stomach issues, tremors, and skin itching. But beyond those common complaints, we have specific, severe case reports that detail catastrophic systemic injury associated with these unregulated products.
The contrast is stark. You're moving from mild discomfort to life-threatening failure. The case reports really underscore the danger of ingredient contamination and unmonitored use.
Is this an example?
One tragic case involved a 36-year-old male who developed rhabdomyolysis, which is the rapid breakdown of damaged muscle tissue. This released components into his bloodstream that completely overwhelmed his kidneys.
Wow.
He also developed a life-threatening acid-base imbalance and severe renal and liver injury. This whole cascade was directly associated with the use of unregulated performance supplements combined with intense, sustained exercise. These severe, though rare, injuries serve as a critical warning against the dangers of unverified formulations.
This brings us to what might be the most insidious threat posed by the supplement industry: the regulatory gap that allows contamination, undisclosed active pharmaceutical ingredients, and ingredients with unknown toxicity to reach the consumer. And the manifestation of this is often severe liver injury.
Yes, hepatotoxicity.
Hepatotoxicity, liver damage caused by chemical agents, is a growing public health concern tied to this market. How substantial is this problem in the medical sphere, and how serious are the outcomes?
It is a critical concern, and its prevalence is definitely rising. Herbal and dietary supplement-induced liver injury, or HILI, now accounts for up to 20% of all hepatotoxicity cases in the U.S.
1 in 5 cases.
1 in 5. And what is particularly alarming is the severity. Research shows that liver failure secondary to ALI is more likely to result in the need for a liver transplantation or even death compared to drug-induced liver injury, or DLI, caused by conventional, regulated medications.
Why is it more severe?
The ALI injuries tend to be more severe, more unpredictable, and less responsive to standard care.
When the Drug-Induced Liver Injury Network, DILIN, investigates these cases, which categories of products are consistently implicated?
Researchers consistently identify 3 major categories implicated in serious liver injury. First, outright anabolic steroids. Second, green tea extract. And third, and crucially, multi-ingredient nutritional supplements, or main NS, the very MIPWs we're discussing.
Let's elaborate on those different signatures of injury. Anabolic steroids are often deceptively marketed as natural bodybuilding aids, but they cause a specific type of liver injury.
Anabolic steroids, when they're taken orally, often induce a prolonged cholestatic liver injury.
Cholestatic.
It means there's a disruption of bile flow from the liver, which causes jaundice, the yellowing of the skin, and severe itching, while this type of injury is usually ultimately self-limiting.
Meaning the liver can recover.
Yes, the liver can recover once the steroid is stopped, but it can take many, many months to resolve, and it requires very careful medical monitoring.
And green tea extract. Why is something that's often viewed as a healthy antioxidant causing acute liver injury?
Green tea extract, or GTE, tends to cause an acute hepatitis-like injury, which actually mimics acute viral hepatitis. This is thought to be related to its high concentration of catechins, though susceptibility seems to be highly individualized.
So it's not the tea, it's the super concentrated extract.
Exactly. In one major Dillon study, GTE was listed as a component in 24 separate instances of non-anabolic steroid liver injury cases. It highlights that even ingredients sourced from natural, healthy items can be toxic when concentrated and consumed in supplement form.
And the MIPWs themselves, the multi-ingredient supplements, they account for the majority of the non-anabolic steroid cases, right?
They account for the largest share, around 68% of the non-anabolic steroid cases. The reason they are so dangerous is the sheer complexity. They typically contain anywhere from 3 to over 20 ingredients, and often the specific toxic component is unknown or it's only suspected.
Can you give an example?
The highly toxic compound usinic acid, which was often used in fat burner products like Lipilas and Somalize, was involved in cases of acute liver failure. The compounding effect of multiple ingredients, along with the very real possibility of contamination, makes diagnosis and appropriate clinical management extremely challenging for doctors.
And this extends beyond products that are explicitly labeled as pre-workouts, touching on the wider, unregulated market, including traditional and complex herbal mixtures.
Absolutely. The lack of standardization plagues the entire HDS industry. Liver injury is frequently linked to complex mixtures found in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurvedic medicine, listing ingredients like ashwagandha or turmeric.
And the problem there is labeling.
Diagnosis is extremely difficult due to poor, inconsistent, or just outright deceptive labeling, and the ever-present risk of contamination with heavy metals, prescription drugs, or undeclared synthetic compounds. The complexity severely compromises consumer safety across the entire board.
We have to highlight the specific substances that regulatory bodies have explicitly banned because they pose an unreasonable demonstrated risk of illness or injury, yet they still show up in adulterated or black market products. These are the red flags the listener must know.
This list really represents the historical failures of the industry, where compounds were pulled from the market due to documented fatalities and severe adverse events.
First up, the powerful stimulant, DMAA.
Dimethylamylamine, or DMA. It's a synthetic stimulant chemically classified as an amphetamine equivalent. It was once highly popular in pre-workouts and fat burners.
And the FDA banned it.
The FDA declared products containing DMAA illegal back in 2013 after accumulating 86 reports of deaths and illnesses, including serious heart problems, nervous system disorders, and psychiatric events.
But it's still out there.
Though banned, consumers should be extremely cautious of products sold internationally or through illicit channels, as discontinued or reformulated DMAA-containing products still circulate.
And the massive ban that really defined the early 2000s supplement market was ephedra.
Ephedra, or mahuang. It contains ephedrine alkaloids. It's a powerful stimulant often recklessly combined with high doses of caffeine, creating a devastating physiological cocktail.
And the results were?
Ephedra was associated with numerous deaths and severe adverse effects. We're talking dangerously high blood pressure, severe palpitations, stroke, seizures, and heart attack. The FDA banned the sale of dietary supplements containing ephedrine alkaloids in 2004, concluding that they posed an unacceptable, unreasonable risk of illness or injury.
Finally, let's discuss androstenedione, a precursor to anabolic steroids.
Androstenedione was aggressively marketed for its purported muscle-building effects. However, scientific trials definitively found no performance benefit. None whatsoever. And that zero benefit was coupled with clear adverse effects. Studies documented significant declines in HDL cholesterol, that's the beneficial protective cholesterol, and significant increases in serum estrogens. Offering high risk and zero reward, it was classified as a Schedule III controlled substance and banned in 2004. These substances exemplify the worst aspects of the supplement market, promises of extreme performance delivered through extremely dangerous, unregulated compounds.
Finally, we need to touch on the ingredients that are still commonly added to complex blends, but lack established efficacy and carry unassessed or negative safety concerns. Let's start with DHEA.
DHEA, or dehydroepiandrosterone, is a steroid hormone precursor. Because of its hormonal activity, it is banned by major sports bodies like the NCAA and WA.
But does it work?
That's the core problem. There's minimal efficacy. The minimal research on its use for performance enhancement shows virtually no evidence of benefit. It does not significantly increase strength, aerobic capacity, or lean body mass compared to a placebo.
And what are the known or unassessed safety issues with it?
Its overall safety profile remains largely unassessed for long-term use. While some short-term studies in men found no serious side effects, DHEA use in women is known to significantly raise serum testosterone levels, which can cause undesirable androgenic effects like severe acne and increased facial hair growth.
Next, Tribulus terrestris, a common fixture touted as a natural way to boost testosterone.
The claims that Tribulus terrestris acts as a testosterone booster are simply not supported by the clinical trials. Multiple studies have found no increase in hormones and thus no measurable improvement in strength or lean mass in subjects taking it.
So it doesn't work. Is it dangerous?
Well, the Australian Institute of Sport strongly advises against its use due to the high risk of contamination in the raw product sourcing. And the safety concern is magnified by animal toxicity studies, which revealed that high intakes of Tribulus terrestris led to severe heart, liver, and kidney damage. The biomedical literature provides insufficient support for both its efficacy and its safety.
And briefly, ginseng and deer antler velvet, two ingredients that pop up frequently.
Both are really examples of expense without benefit. Numerous studies investigating various forms of ginseng have consistently shown little to no ergogenic effect on critical performance measures, like peak power output, time to exhaustion, or oxygen consumption.
So no performance benefit.
The research does not support its inclusion for performance, and adverse effects can include headache and sleep disturbances. Deer antler velvet, often marketed because it contains IGF-1, also shows no significant ergogenic effects compared to placebo. And critically, IGF-1 is banned by major athletic organizations, meaning its mere presence in a product is enough to trigger a sanction.
Okay, let's bring all of this together for the listener. We have established this high-stakes tension. On one hand, supplements offer tangible, evidence-backed benefits derived from a few core ingredients: caffeine, creatine, beta-alanine for training adaptation.
Some good stuff.
Yet these benefits are packaged within a murky, often poorly regulated market that introduces significant, sometimes fatal health risks, specifically revolving around liver failure and cardiovascular stress. So what are the implications for you, the learner?
The implication is the absolute need for critical caution and personal accountability. We must understand the regulatory bedrock of this industry. In the U.S., dietary supplements are regulated under the Dietary Supplement Health and Education Act of 1994.
DSHE.
DSHEA, exactly. And crucially, DSHEA regulates supplements as foods, not as drugs.
And that food classification is where the fundamental gap in safety lies, correct?
That's exactly it. The regulation assumes the products are safe until the FDA can definitively prove them unsafe, which is usually after they are already on the market and have caused harm.
So they're reactive, not proactive.
Completely. Manufacturers are responsible for ensuring truthful labeling and safety, but they are not required to submit evidence of efficacy or safety to the FDA prior to marketing. This hands-off approach creates a market that is just ripe for abuse.
Which leads directly to the endemic problem of fraud and adulteration, especially in high-demand products like pre-workouts.
Products marketed for bodybuilding and performance enhancement are among those most frequently flagged for intentional adulteration. Manufacturers often spike these products with undeclared, high-risk ingredients, like synthetic anabolic steroids, previously banned stimulants like DMAA, or even prescription medications.
And the consequences of that are twofold.
Exactly. Consumers face severe, unpredictable health problems, and athletes using these tainted products face immediate disqualification from competition if drug testing reveals prohibited substances, regardless of whether they knew it was in there or not.
If a person is determined to use an MIPW or any performance-enhancing supplement, what is the absolute safety checklist they must run through to minimize the risks we've spent this deep dive outlining?
First and foremost, the foundational truth remains. The best way to optimize performance, body composition, and health is through a carefully chosen diet, structured, progressive training, and adequate rest and recovery.
The basics.
The basics. Supplements are additions. They are not replacements.
If they do choose to supplement, what are the actionable steps for risk mitigation?
Okay, 4 things. 1, consult a healthcare provider before starting use. This is non-negotiable, especially if you have any pre-existing conditions like hypertension, heart issues, liver or kidney concerns, or if you're taking any prescription medication.
Okay.
2. Demand verification. If you use supplements, look exclusively for products that have been certified by a reputable third party like NSF Certified for Sport or Informed Sport. This provides the best available assurance regarding purity, dose accuracy, and freedom from banned substances.
Number 3.
3. Athletes must become experts. You must thoroughly investigate every single ingredient against the World Anti-Doping Agency, or WADA prohibited list. Even minute contamination can lead to sanctions and the end of a career.
And 4.
4. Practice selective use. Avoid taking pre-workout daily. Reserve it for your most intense, high-volume sessions or only when your energy is genuinely lagging, rather than becoming chronically dependent on high-dose stimulants.
And finally, based on the severity of the systemic injuries we reviewed, what are the absolute red flag symptoms that demand immediate cessation of the product and urgent medical attention?
If you are consuming any performance supplement and experience severe, potentially related symptoms, you must seek medical help immediately and bring the product with you. These critical symptoms include persistent nausea, unexplained weakness, chronic fatigue, a fever, severe abdominal pain, chest pain, shortness of breath.
And the really big ones.
The onset of jaundice, that yellowing of the skin or eyes, or the development of brown or discolored urine. These are not minor side effects. They are potential markers of acute liver injury, renal failure, or a cardiovascular event.
We started this deep dive looking for the performance edge, and we found that a select small group of ingredients, creatine, caffeine, and beta-alanine, do deliver genuine, measurable, and synergistic benefits, particularly for high-intensity, short-duration activities.
I do.
However, those proven, modest benefits are constantly under threat. They're often completely overshadowed by the significant and unpredictable risks associated with high, unregulated doses, hidden, unlisted stimulants, and the pervasive danger of multi-ingredient proprietary blends that can cause severe, sometimes fatal, cardiovascular events or irreversible hepatotoxicity.
So if we connect this back to the bigger picture, given the widespread problem of adulteration, mislabeling, and the critical lack of pre-market regulation in the supplement industry, where complex mixtures are the norm and assigning causality for harm is exceptionally difficult, what critical thinking step must you take before trusting a product that promises performance beyond the capacity of diet and discipline training alone?
What's the bottom line?
You must fundamentally weigh the proven incremental benefit of a handful of individual ingredients, which you could likely buy separately and control the dose of yourself, against the unpredictable, often life-threatening risks posed by contamination, undisclosed active compounds, and excessive, unmonitored high-dose stimulants. The decision hinges entirely on whether you believe that incremental gain is worth the non-zero risk of severe systemic harm in a largely unsupervised market.